All right, we've started the recording, and I am on with Faye Whyte. Faye, you're like a regular now. I don't feel like I even need to introduce you. You're in the great north of Canada,
Yep.
a vet by day, and a fantastic adventure writer by night. Adventure writer, superhero writer. What
Yeah, yeah, I guess
supernatural
superheroes.
thriller?
Yeah, just
Yeah, somewhere in
yeah,
there,
getting rid
somewhere
of
in
some
that.
stress. Yeah.
Yeah, somewhere in that genre bending stuff. And we're going to talk about plotting your series.
Okay.
So, sorry, I'm laughing because I know you're nervous. How many books are we talking about in the series? Do we know?
Well, I'm hoping to only have to write three. So.
3 books. Okay. Um, do we want to leave it open for more books? If you write 3 books and people are like, this is the Hunger Games and I love it, and I'm going to buy a gazillion of these, and you're like J.K. Rowling moving up into a mansion by yourself, with your family, like on a giant hill with a huge gate around it, are you going to want to add to it after that?
Um, I don't think so. Not with the characters the way they are. I
Gotcha.
would
Okay.
I would go out with like maybe add different characters in the same world.
Okay, cool. All right, so 3 books. Um, so tell us, you are like 75% of the way through the first book.
Yep.
So give us a basic overview of the story.
I knew you were gonna ask me that.
Of course,
So
that's what we're talking about. What do you? Okay,
okay.
let's do it. Let's
Um,
break it down more micro. I'll ask a smaller
okay.
question.
Thank you.
Tell me about Ruth.
So Ruth is so she has special powers. And this is a world where just people can spontaneously have them. They show up at puberty.
Nice.
And so she's got powers. She has a daughter who's 12 and an ex husband who's a jerk. And she
What's the
is
ex-husband's name?
Daniel.
Daniel. Okay,
And her character flaw is that she doesn't trust herself or anybody else.
gotcha. And the daughter is Abby.
Yep, that's right.
Okay, she doesn't trust herself. Um, talk about how that doesn't trust herself manifests in her life.
So she doesn't like to use her powers, and she actually will. There's devices that are provided to control them, and she just relies on the devices and doesn't use them. She doesn't want to be powerful or special. She just wants to kind of disappear.
Okay, and she's got this ex-husband Daniel. He has
Hmm.
no powers, right?
No,
Okay. And Abby, has Abby hit puberty yet?
no,
Okay. And she doesn't know yet. She's a big
right.
question mark. Okay. Who else is in Ruth's life in the book?
So she has a friend named Sela who is a nun and connected to a. Sorry, there's a cat behind me making
Uh,
noise.
no, that's fine. I couldn't hear it. Yeah, and I'm
Okay,
sorry I'm looking down. I'm taking notes.
that's okay.
So she's got Seal as a nun.
Sela is a friend, and then she has some friends from the neighborhood she grew up in. A woman who was her babysitter, whose name is Fel, and Fel's daughter Nate.
Okay. So Sela the nun. Does Sela have powers?
Yes,
What are Sela's powers?
she is a telepath.
Nice. Um, and then who did you say the neighbor was?
Oh, Fel.
Fel. Okay. And Fel's daughter Nate,
Yeah, son Nate.
son Nate. That makes more sense. But I'm not going to judge. I named kid Riggs. So okay, so we've got Sela, Ruth. What's Ruth's relationship like with Sela?
It's kind of a little bit like a mother-daughter sort of thing. Like she
Okay,
will ask Sela questions. She doesn't tell her much,
gotcha.
but she will get guidance from her.
Okay. Who else is in Ruth's life
So
in the book, specifically in the
yeah.
book? Yeah.
So there's a group. So there's a group in the book of people who are sort of people with powers, and they're kind of affiliated, trying to help one another. In this society, they are looked down upon and they're feared.
Okay. What's
And
the
so
group's
there's
name?
Oh shit! Hang on, sorry.
It's okay. You can
I can't
cuss.
remember.
Okay.
Call them, I don't know. Call them the auxiliary. I can't remember what
Excellent.
I
All
call
right.
them.
Can I call him AA?
You sure can. Yeah.
Yes. I'm going to imagine them as an Alcoholics Anonymous group.
Okay. Perfect.
Okay. So we have an AA group. Who is in the AA group?
So Trudy is she's kind of the leader of the group, and inter she works with the city as well. So she kind
Okay.
of is like a liaison. It's,
So she's like group supervisor,
yeah.
making sure nobody breaks the rules,
Yep.
making the coffee at the meetings.
No, she doesn't make coffee.
Okay.
She has someone else make coffee.
Nice. So she's boss lady.
Yep.
Awesome. Who else is in the group?
So there's a guy named Jerry. Jerry is really good at tech,
Okay.
and he kind of like he knows how to run the devices that control their powers, that kind of stuff.
Gotcha. Every superhero needs a guy in a chair. That's what
Yep.
Spider-Man said. Uh, who else is in the group?
Trying to think at the very beginning, like I'm at the very beginning.
Okay.
Okay, so there's a bunch. There's some other people that won't really become important in the plot.
Okay.
They're
We don't care about them.
members. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Frickin' frack, I call them. So
Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, so we've got Danielle, the ex-husband. We've got Fel, the neighbor, and her son Nate. We've got Sela, the nun. We've got Trudy, the boss lady, and we've got Jerry, the tech dude. Are there any other characters important to the story?
yes, so there are some people who will come in kind of after the very beginning. Claire and Victor are kind of well-trained, powered people who come to actually train the locals.
Nice. What are they training them in?
Just how to defend themselves, how to look after themselves.
Okay. I like this whole like advocacy group thing you got going. That's really fun. Okay. Anybody else coming in to the novel?
Not that I can think of.
Okay. What is Ruth's relationship with Trudy?
They tolerate one another.
Tolerate one another. Okay. What's Ruth's relationship with Jerry?
She thinks he's kind of a little bit of a. He's a little silly.
Okay.
Yeah, she doesn't. She's she likes him okay, but she doesn't really respect him or anything.
Gotcha. Ruth's relationship with Claire?
Ruth and Claire are oil and gas.
Gotcha.
Like they're very similar, but also very different.
Okay. Ruth's relationship with Victor?
They she isn't quite sure what to make of him because he's too nice.
Okay.
Too perfect, someone once said.
I said that when we were building your character
I
wheel.
think you did, yeah.
Okay. So just to talk you through what I'm doing, because I want you also to be able to think through plots. So what I'm doing on my little notepad here is I've taken the names of all the characters you've given me. You can't actually read it on the camera anyway. I've taken the names of all the characters you've given me, and the reason I was asking you to tell me about each character is because I find that when I'm thinking through my characters, when I'm talking to another author, the author usually, when you ask an author to tell you about a character, they usually tell you the thing that is most important to them about the character.
Mm-hmm.
Not the thing that's most important to the plot, not the thing that's most important to the world that they've created, but the thing that's like most important to them. So, you led with Ruth has special powers. She doesn't know what they are. And she's a single mom with a jerk ex-husband, right? Like, so as we talk about where your series goes, therein lies the problems that as an author, you're going to want to deal with, because like we have to write what we're interested in. Especially when we're starting out. Now, if you've got down a system where you're cranking out like 20 romance novels a year, and you've just got it down, then who cares? Like, just come up with the next idea and get the next novel out. But if you're like getting started like you are with your first series, then it's important that there's stuff in the series that you are passionate about to help keep the momentum going, right? So
Okay.
Yeah, so that's why I asked through all the characters. And then the reason I asked what Ruth's relationship was is because your plot your plot is a well, I like Jay Thorne's three C's. We'll use that. The challenge, choices, and consequences, right? Like that's your story. There's a challenge faced by a character. The character has to make choices based on the challenge, and then those choices have consequences. And the character has to deal with the consequences. Ideally, in a happy story, the final consequences are good based on the choices that the character made. But the character is going to go on a journey of making choices, and we're going to see the consequences of those choices until finally we end at the final choice and the final consequence. So that's your plot, but and that's kind of like the bones. But the muscle that makes that plot move are the characters making those choices and interacting with those choices and acting out those consequences, right? Like, so it's the characters that we're actually following through the choices. If you think about it this way, you can come up with the most dramatic challenge of all time. If there's not a character to live through that dramatic challenge, then it doesn't matter what the challenge is, because what we want to do in a story is follow a character on this journey. So we have to care about the character. We have to care about the people around them. That character is going to take us on the challenge. And that's why we care about the consequences at the end, because we care about what happens to this character. Otherwise, it's just a weird thought experiment. Right, like without the character for us to care about, story is just a strange philosophical argument about like, what if this random person had this thing happen, they made this choice, and then this happened in the end. We're like, it's a fascinating thought experiment. We don't care if that's about that as a story. So that's why I first asked you about your cast and about your
Okay.
characters, to get the like, okay, so let's get our players on the board, right?
Okay.
So tell me about the challenge that I'm stealing Jay's. I should, since we're recording this, I should say I'm stealing Jay's three C's from his amazing book, The Three Story Method, which everybody should go buy immediately. Okay, so you're welcome, Jay. Not that anybody listens to this that doesn't like hasn't already bought Jay's book, but I'm just saying. Okay, so let's talk about the challenge to Ruth in this first book.
Okay.
You said the arc she's going through in this first book is an arc of self-confidence, where she doesn't trust herself and she has to learn to trust herself.
Yep.
So what's the challenge that causes her to move from no trust to some trust?
So Nate goes missing.
Okay. Nate goes, Sela's son disappears. So you can see, I'm just going to make a line here. I should probably be doing this on like a Jamboard or like something we can see together. Let me pull up a Jamboard.
Okay.
For anybody listening, it's Friday. Before we got on the line, Faye and I established that we both had like somewhat difficult weeks. So it's
Do you want me to hum while you
we
do
are
this?
we are giving ourselves passes. Is all I'm saying. Sorry, I'm in the wrong Google.
That's okay. Take your time.
Yeah, it'll take me a second. And everybody listening to the podcast has to wait because I don't edit. And I say that with pride, like it's some kind of symbol, but the truth is I just don't know how. Okay, there we go. Now I'm in. It took me a minute. Let me share my screen. Okay, so for the first book, we're going to do, we'll start with red. Nate goes missing. And then we're also, and we know, also with red is no trust for, no self-confidence. We'll put it that way. Is that a good way to put it?
Yep.
For Ruth. Okay. Stop. Okay, there we go. Where are we going to, this is our start. That's why it's on the left-hand side. Where are we going to finish?
So at the end of it, she actually uses her powers to save some children and trust herself to do it.
Uses powers to save children. And I'm assuming one of those children is Nate.
Yep.
Okay. If you kill Nate, in this book. It's not a thriller anymore. It's a tragedy.
I will not kill Nate. I
Yeah.
promise.
Okay. How does Ruth feel about herself at the end of the book?
So she is more self confident. So she's, I guess, learning self confidence.
Okay. Is she like ready to start experimenting with her powers at the end of the book?
Um, I don't know if I'd say it that way. She's gonna actually be ready to like go out and help other people.
Okay, so she's beyond experimenting. She's like ready to go try things out.
Yeah.
Take her powers for a spin.
Sure.
Oh. Okay, take her powers for the spin. All right, so we've got this. So what are the challenges and choices that happen along the way? What are the beats?
Okay, so now I can see I could open up a thing. I got a hole. So after Nate goes missing, she's invited to join the AA group.
Okay.
So yeah, she does join them because that's kind of the only way she can start looking for him.
Okay.
She can't do it on her own.
So Ruth joins group to save Nate.
Yep.
Have they invited her to the group before and she hasn't joined?
Yes.
Nice. Okay. What's the next beat?
And then she has to learn how to, like, she gets trained to use her powers, and that's
Who's
the
training
whole.
her?
Claire and Victor.
Okay. Ruth gets trained by Claire and Victor. Is there romance there?
Probably not in this book, but maybe in the future.
Maybe in the future. Okay.
Yeah.
So Ruth gets trained by Claire and Victor. How is Ruth feeling at this point about her powers? She fail a lot?
Yeah. Like, yeah.
Good. Character's got to hurt. Character's got to hurt. So we're going through a season of failure. What happens after the training? Is there something that... So she chooses to be trained. She's failing a lot. Then what?
See, now I'm just, my head's empty. So they they actually they try to save because they figure out that other kids are being abducted.
Okay.
They try to save a kid. I think they do save one, but then they fail to save another one.
How does Ruth feel about herself at the end of the try to save, lose one?
She never wants to quit, but she doesn't see how other people can help her yet. I don't know if that's...
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So not ready to give up on Nate, but feeling hopeless.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. What happens after that? What choice is she making after that? I like what you're putting here. So let's just be clear. Like, part of what is really great about the way you're describing your plot, Faye, is that the lead character is making choices, and that's what we want. We want like an active lead character who's making choices along the way. So what comes next?
So she does actually start to work with the group and starts to feel more like part of the team.
Okay. She chooses to work with the group?
Yeah, she starts to kind of, be more comfortable and chooses to work with the group.
She's got an active characters making choices. Okay, and how does she start to feel? Start to gain a little bit of confidence?
Yeah. So she she does things like she kind of talks back to the ex-husband kind of thing.
Gotcha. So starts to stand up for herself.
Stands up for herself a little bit.
Okay. Way to go, Ruth. Okay. What happens after that?
So probably the next big thing is that her daughter gets abducted.
Okay, so we're raising the stakes. Um, I'm going to make this a different color because it's not a choice she's making.
Yeah.
I can't spell that. Kidnapped.
Sure.
Okay, so her daughter gets kidnapped. How does she respond to that?
So after the initial kind of reflection, she realizes that she needs to work together with her ex-husband and also work together with the group.
Okay.
She needs to.
So she takes on allies.
Yeah, and she needs to sort of guide. Like she needs to put together a team to help her.
Okay. Remind me that we're going to go back to the beginning in a minute.
Okay.
So she takes on a team of allies. And then what happens?
They go rescue the kids.
Okay. Successful rescue?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to recommend 2 beats in here.
Okay.
That I know, and this isn't serious, this is just book beats, but two beats you probably need.
Okay.
One, and you may have, and we just didn't talk about them. One, when she joins the group, we need a beat where she's willing to train, but not willing to be a part of the group itself.
Okay.
Does that make sense? You need,
Yep.
because the story you just laid out to me, the way that she finally comes to herself is by gathering allies around her, right? Like, so we need to start with Ruth as a loner who doesn't want allies, which plays nicely into her lack of self-confidence, right? Like, not me, not with these people. So once she decides to actually join the group, we need this like Ruth as a loner who, I'll train with you, but I'm not going to be a part of your team.
Yeah, and there's actually a part in there where they kind of all live together in a bunker sort of place, and
Nice.
she's like, yeah, I'm going home on the weekends to spend it with my kid, and like, so she does
Perfect.
try to differentiate herself.
Yeah, I'm here, but I'm not. And I would make that clear because we want the realization of the payoff that like, okay, I need to take on this team in order to accomplish. You may also want to include a beat here where she tries to save her daughter by herself and fails.
Okay.
And the reason I say that's a beat is because you need to emphasize that she needs the team. Right? Like the story that you're building is a story about somebody who discovers themselves in the context of a team. That teamwork's super important. So we need to just show to the reader that like she's not capable of doing this on her own. Okay. If she tries to do it on her own, she's going to fail. Does that make sense?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. So this is the first plot. We have Ruth at the end of this with a team taking her powers for a spin and kind of hungry for more. Any other characters have like character transformation through the book?
Not really a big transformation for anybody else in this one. It's mostly just getting to know them.
Just getting to know them. Okay. So let's talk for a second about how we're going to modulate Ruth's voice through this. So we're starting off with Ruth. And actually, let me pull it. I do have your character wheel from when we talked before. So let me pull that up real quick. We're starting with Ruth, who is this like she's using sarcasm as a shield, which is great for somebody who can't operate with a team because she's like pushing away, right? She's passive, she's stubborn, she's isolating herself, anxious when it comes to others, an introvert, but this natural protector who's persistent and repressed. Now, we don't want to be like, at the end of the book, she's an extrovert who loves people, who's like a big part of this team, right? Like that's not what we want. We want baby steps, right? Like, so if we're going to, because again, we're planning a 3-book arc and there's some aspects of somebody's personality that it doesn't matter what happens. It's not going to change. They can learn to put on masks. They can learn to like, mute aspects of their personality in different roles. But Ruth is probably always going to be an introvert who likes to isolate, right? Like, oh, come on, Excel, why are you giving me the spinning wheel of death? She's always going to be this introvert who likes to isolate. But there's also aspects of this where we can learn to push her out of, right?
Mm.
Like,
Yep.
she may not always be passive, she may not always be stubborn, right? Like, those are things that you can train out of yourself.
Mhm.
She will probably always be persistent. That's a positive quality we want to keep. But this word repressed, that's something we want to like grow her out of. Does
Mhm.
that make sense?
Yep. Absolutely.
So if we're coming, I'm just giving up on Excel. If we're
Okay.
coming here and we're going to say like, so how's Ruth's voice modulating, right? We've got passive, um, oh, come on, dude. See, I'm struggling tonight, Faye.
That's
Passive,
okay.
introvert, stubborn, uh, isolated, um, and what was the other? Repressed was the other word we used. Persistent and repressed, right? If this
Mhm.
is her voice at the start of the book, then when we move to the end of the book, we want to go to, she's still going to be introvert, right?
Yep.
Still going to be persistent. What other words in there do you want to hang on to where you're like, those words mean Ruth to me?
Um, Probably stubborn.
Okay, still going to be stubborn. Any others?
Well, I mean, passive has to change because if she's gonna like lead a team, she has to become more active, right?
I mean, yeah, but not, I mean, yes, but not necessarily in this book. But that is kind
Mhm.
of the decision you're making in this book, right? Like,
Yeah.
isolated and passive. So, but we don't want to go all the way to like active,
Yeah.
right? Like, so we want to be like reluctantly connected,
Yeah.
right? And then instead of passive, um, oh, what's a good word to describe someone who's like forcing themselves to take action? Um, Maybe motivated. Mm, accepting. I'm just going to put accepting.
Okay.
Does that word work for you?
Yeah. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, where she's like, because we're saying she's passive, but now she's kind of accepting of this need to take
Yep.
a lead. Probably if there's no conflict, you can see her like not
Mhm.
doing anything. So we've got your first book, right?
Oh, that was so easy.
It was super easy. This is fun. I like doing plots.
Mhm.
So I don't know that I'm very good at it, but I enjoy talking. It's fun.
Yeah.
And it's got no consequences for me, so I'm good to go. I can say whatever I want. You're the one that has to figure it out. I'm just kidding, Faye. I'll be here to figure it out with you. So
Yep.
when we start the second book, what we do is we take the end of the first book, unless we're going to do a time jump.
No, not really.
Yeah, and if we're going to do a time jump, we got to move it a little bit. But usually, we just take the end of the first book and we
Put
pick
her
it
in
up
there.
at the second book.
Okay.
So we can see that Ruth is now introverted, persistent, stubborn, connecting to change. This is now the first book where Ruth is. Ruth is ready to take her powers for the spin, and Ruth has to save children, including Nate. Now, oh, that's not, sorry. Ruth saved the children. So now we've got Ruth has a team and is a reluctant member. Okay. Do you have any thoughts for book two?
So, the theme of book two is going to bring in a journey for Claire, and it's going to be more about dealing with grief and acceptance
Oh,
of that kind of thing.
nice. So we're going to move Ruth. We're going to share the plot now, and we're going to move Ruth up, and we're going to move Ruth's voice up, and we're going to come to Claire. We're going to add Claire in. So where is Claire at the start of the book?
Okay, so the fastest way to describe Claire is she's Margot from The Magicians.
Oh, nice. That's my favorite magician.
So she's
Margot and
felt
Elliot are my
she's
favorites.
foul-mouthed. She's very concerned about equality and people being treated fairly. She
In
is
Enneagram terms, we'd say she's an 8.
okay.
Sorry, people listening got that. So she's fair. She's mostly because of the fairness is super
Yeah.
important. Fairness
She,
and justice.
she is very outspoken.
Outspoken. Okay.
And opinionated. I don't know if that's different than what's already up
It is.
there. Okay.
Anything else?
She cares about people way more than she'll admit.
Okay. But she has a tough exterior.
Yep.
Okay. So this is Claire.
Yep.
That's her voice. What is Claire going to learn in book 2?
She has to deal with the death of someone she loves.
Okay. Somebody she loves die at the beginning of the book?
Yep.
Okay. Who dies?
Oh crap! I knew you were gonna ask me that. I can't remember his name.
Family member or friend?
Lover.
Lover. Lover dies. Lover killed?
Yep.
Does she know he's killed?
Yes.
Okay. Lover killed.
Yep. There's a scene that I'm actually not allowed to delete. People we know don't want me to get rid of that scene.
Okay. People we know who will go unmentioned aren't allowing their the person they're coaching through writing the book to delete a scene. Okay, so Lover is killed at the beginning of the book.
Yep.
How does that impact Claire?
So she's going to do her best to ignore it and just move on. So she's just gonna, kind of seriously stiff up her lip. Just
Claire decides
I'm fine
to swallow feelings. Okay, let's talk about the end of the book. Where's the end of the book?
So at the end of the book, she has to accept. So at the beginning, she's kind of like, everybody I love dies. So that's sort of the thing she has to kind of.
Gotcha. Does that cause her to close herself off from other people?
Yep.
Okay. Where is she at the end of the book?
She is going to, and see, this is stuff I haven't thought through at all. She's going to get to some kind of a authentic friendship with Ruth, and
okay.
So
her and Ruth become buds. To use a good Letterkenny Canadian word. Okay. How does that change Claire's perspective on life?
So she is going to just be a little bit softer.
Okay.
She's still going to be a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, sure. Does she give up on this idea that everybody she loves dies?
Yeah, I think she's going to have to save somebody in there somewhere near the end.
Let me ask you a couple options there. Does she give up on the idea that everybody she loves dies, or does she accept the idea that everybody she loves dies and that she has to live with it? Or does she accept the idea that everybody she loves dies and she allows herself to grieve? Or does she accept the idea that everybody dies and she still needs to be connected to people?
I think she's going to just finally allow herself to grieve.
Okay. So Claire allows herself to grieve her lover. What does her grieving look like?
I don't know.
Put Claire in your head.
She's probably going to be pretty angry and demonstrative and,
okay,
go off by herself and beat something up.
Okay. So we got a stage of grief here. So let's talk about grief for a second.
Okay.
Grief comes in stages, right? And those stages don't come in any specific order. There is anger, there's denial, there is the final stage is acceptance. Sorry, I'm trying to think of them. Anger, denial, uh,
Bargaining.
bargaining. Yeah. Let me write them down or start forgetting. Anger. When I was a pastor, I knew these off the top of my head. Denial, bargaining, acceptance. There's a couple more in there. So we're taking her on a journey of grief. We probably need to run her through some of the stages,
Yep.
right? And you want to end her at acceptance. Shock and denial. I just
Yeah,
looked
there's
it up. Depression. Um, oh, there's only 5. I was saying 7. There's only 5.
okay.
Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And
Okay.
you go through them in any order, right? Like there's no specific order to them. You just people realistically like, and a lot of times, especially when I was dealing with people, like working with people who are going through a lot of grief, you come in and out of them, right? Like you'll be depressed and then you'll get really angry, and you'll think to yourself like, oh, I've come through the depression, so I'm not going to be depressed again. And sure enough, like a week later, you're like back in your pajamas on the couch. So it's like, you flow through them. So what I'm hearing you say when you describe the book is that Claire is going to come to acceptance,
Yep.
whatever that looks like for her, which we can think on
Yep.
more in a second. And she's going to have beats in here where she's in denial, or what some might call, we could call with her repression, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
it's this like nothing's changed, everything's fine.
Yep.
In fact, let's just put that in there so we remember. Um, uh, we're going to have in there we're going to have a moment of anger, and probably since she's, this is a murder, vengeance. We're going to have a moment of depression and some bargaining. So this is Claire's, right? Like we'll have these beats in here. Who knows what order we're going to have them in? We know we're starting with denial and repression.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's fine. Nothing's changed for me. And then usually in this kind of story, I'm just going to give you like the standard in this kind of story. We can change it if you want to. In this kind of story, anger and vengeance comes in the I'll feel better when they're dead.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I'll feel better when I killed them.
Yeah. That's actually the, never mind. I was about to give a giant spoiler for a TV show that just dropped its last episode, and I'm going to keep it to myself.
Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, those who are watching it, you know what I'm talking about. Okay, bargaining is the whole like, I can feel better if X thing is happening, right? Or if I become X thing. And this is the classic like deal with God. I'll never drink again.
Mm-hmm.
What's a vice that she has?
I have to think about that.
Okay. Trade some vice for feeling better.
Okay.
And then depression is the like all is lost moment. So this is kind of where we're going to take. Do you know any other beats in Claire's story that you're like, these are beats, that these are choices she's going to make?
Not. I haven't thought through it very much,
Okay. I'm just going to give you some. These aren't in any order,
Okay.
but I'm just going to line some up with what she needs, right? There needs to be the everything, uh, not Ruth, Claire chooses to pretend like everything is fine. That's where you got to start,
Hmm.
right? Like that's your opening beat is that Claire chooses to pretend like everything is fine. Have you thought much through Ruth's story in this?
Not a lot.
Okay. So are you okay if I just give you some beats for Ruth?
Oh yeah, go for it.
Okay. So if we have Ruth as well, before we get beats for Ruth, if we have Ruth as the reluctant team member and Ruth is ready to take her powers for a spin,
Hmm.
how do you want Ruth to end in this book?
So she needs to be comfortable with her powers, and part of her journey is just going to be like adjusting to being away from Abby, because she removes herself from Abby to for the girl's safety.
Okay. So she's removing herself from Abby from the girl's safety. And you want, so really, what I'm kind of hearing you say is that her powers are a substance. Like if we were to take the idea of powers out and we just ask like what she's doing,
Hmm.
because the powers are kind of like an inherent
Yeah.
symbol for something.
Yeah, they're just yeah.
Yeah. What it sounds like you're saying she's doing is accepting her role.
Yeah.
Okay. And is this a martyring of herself?
No, it's just a learning to be comfortable with herself,
Okay.
where she's not actually defined by anybody else. So
Okay.
becoming more individual.
Is part of her role taking care of her team members?
It probably will be. She one of the things she cares about people who need her, and and she will go out of her way for them, and she also will go out of her way for animals and children.
Okay. So I'm going to change this final beat here for Claire,
Okay.
because this final beat for Claire has to do with Ruth.
Hmm.
And we want a beat for Claire that's just for Claire.
Yep.
Right. So here we're going to have Claire. How does Claire feel about the team coming into the book? You said she's like a trainer. Yep. That like goes from town to town. Is this a temporary gig for her?
She doesn't really see anything beyond it. And she would never admit it, but she feels like they're kind of her family.
But at the start of the book.
Yep. Yep. So the group that they're with, like there's a bigger group that they're all part of. And yeah. So this is kind of, she sees herself doing this for the rest of her life.
Okay. Does she see herself doing it for the rest of her life with Ruth and this town, or does she see herself potentially moving on to another town?
Yeah, she would just keep moving. She doesn't. The only person she really like, other than let's just call him Mark. Other than Mark, who dies, she cares a lot about Victor. He's been a partner.
Gotcha. So Claire sees herself as a roving trainer, but this is her life.
Yeah, she comes into a town, she fixes the people,
and then she leaves. Yeah. So that's actually your opening story for Claire, right? Mm-hmm. And then the first crisis she runs into is her lover is killed. Mm-hmm. That's actually your inciting incident.
Yep.
Not the journey that Claire is on, right? So the journey we need Claire to be on is the accepting this local group as her family, right? I'm going to stay. It's the Doc Hollywood journey. Do you know what I'm saying when I mean that?
Not at all.
Michael J. Fox, small town doctor.
Okay.
Well, no, I'm sorry. Michael J. Fox just graduated from his residency and is driving to LA to become a world famous plastic surgeon, where he's going to get all the ladies and have all the monies. Mm-hmm. Right. And on his way there, he gets pulled over by a cop in a small town who gives him a ticket. and the judge says your sentence for speeding while your car is being fixed, because he wrecks his car while your car is being fixed, is to be the local doctor. Our doctor's sick, you have to be the local doctor.
Okay. Yeah. Lightning McQueen.
It is, Cars is a retelling of Doc Hollywood.
There you
Yeah.
go. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, should have gone with Cars.
Well,
Right.
kids.
So Lightning McQueen has to stay in town,
Okay.
falls in
Gotcha.
love with town, right? Like, comes to accept town as his own people.
Okay.
And even though he continues to be international race star, right? Like, town is now his crew.
Where's going to build his hotel? Yeah.
So that's what you're doing with Claire, right?
Okay.
Like, Claire, roving trainer, ready to get the hell out of Dodge. Why are we still here? Mark, pack up your crap. It's time to go. And if you're not going to come with me, I'm going to leave and leave you here. There'll be another Mark in the next town, right? Like, cold, foul mouth Claire, get your effing suitcase together, because
Mhm.
this is worth following, you dumb bee. So at the end, we want Claire open to family and being like, you guys are my people, right? And the way that that happens, so we're running a parallel story here, right? You're running Claire's story and Ruth's story. So the way this happens is Ruth has to,
Ruth's actually taking almost the opposite journey because she's going from at the beginning just getting away from her family and missing them and learning how to be
yeah.
independent.
So at the end of this, Ruth is a leader who's walked Claire through trauma. Right?
Yep.
So you have Claire accepting Ruth as a leader, and Ruth taking that leadership role.
Okay.
So how do you feel about those two character journeys?
Yeah, I can start to see how they can kind of interweave and
Are you passionate enough about this journey of searching for Claire's killer to write this story?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I've got a whole bunch of twists that don't have nothing to do with the character journey.
Okay.
I got fun stuff in mind.
Nice. What's the fun stuff?
So I'm gonna have an attack on a politician who is friendly towards these folks. And the twist will be that, I shouldn't tell you the whole thing. I guess I should. So the politician's attacked, and that's kind of how that's where Mark is killed.
So that's early on.
Yeah.
Okay.
And basically the search for the people who attacked him leads to something terrible that he did in his past, that he's looks on the surface like he's friendly towards the people with powers, but he's not.
Okay. So politicians, I can't spell. A wholeness is revealed. Uncovered.
Yeah. I just realized that the bad guys in my stories tend to be rich white guys.
Mine too. Yeah. Okay. Politics. What other fun twists do you have coming?
They're going to be traveling more, so there'll be more. Like at the first one, in the first story, they're all in one city. And this one, there will be more travel, so there'll be some interesting travel that I haven't figured out yet.
Okay. Are they traveling in order to find the killer?
Yeah. So it's basically like they're chasing the killer, and then when they find her, she's not really that bad.
So each of these cities, is there an encounter with the killer in your head?
They'll probably come close to her in one city and then completely miss her in another.
Okay. Totally miss killer. And then you're gonna need one because we gotta see him fail.
Gotta have
right.
Show him, yeah.
Killer beats them.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
You got to have a moment where the killer beats them. End
Remember.
game isn't cool unless Thanos kicks the crap out of everybody in Infinity War. So you gotta have a moment where the killer beats them, and then
The
they
showdown.
come together in the showdown. Right. So these are what you're describing here are the beats of your story,
Hmm.
right? But they're not the choices Ruth and Claire are making, and
Yeah.
they're not the way that Ruth and Claire are changing.
That that's something that I totally did not understand. That I think you're almost beating into me now.
Yeah,
Um, that yeah, the story almost doesn't really strictly have a direct relationship to the character journey.
and it can. We just need
Yeah.
to decide. So what you've got here is the bones,
Yeah.
right? Like you've got a really great skeleton, powered person, her lover's killed. There's a politician in there, and they chase the killer. They almost catch him a couple times. The killer beats them, and then they all come together in the showdown to catch the killer,
Hmm.
right? But that is not. That's a philosophical argument,
Hmm.
and we
Yeah.
all go like, "Huh,
Who cares?
cool." Well, not who cares, but like,
That's.
yeah, fun to think about for a couple minutes. I'm not going to invest however long it takes me to read the 90,000 words of that story,
Hmm.
but yeah, okay. What I care about is Ruth and Claire's journey through this,
Hmm.
right? Like, so what we need to do is line up their reactions, the choices they make. Lovers killed, politician is attacked, everything is fine. Move to the next city, right?
Yeah.
Claire Ruth needs to be, and I'm just going to throw some out there
Sure.
just to like show you how this works.
Okay.
I'm not actually like, please don't take these as decisions being made, because I
Okay.
know you like to do that with me. Don't do that. I'm
Okay.
just throwing these out there to show you how I would process this, right? Like,
Okay.
so the
Yep.
lover's killed. We have Ruth going on this journey of leadership, right?
Yep.
So you need to start off with Ruth says, not my problem. So the consequence of the denial and not my problem, you're going to have another beat in here, which is like Victor demands, Ruth steps up, and Claire, you know,
Takes.
comes
Yeah.
comes to,
Takes.
right? Like wakes up.
Yeah.
So
She
Ruth needs to step up
takes
and Claire
time.
needs to wakes up. Uh, that's got to come in here. And then you're going to send Claire and Ruth on a buddy comedy type journey, right? We're in a car. We don't want to be there, right? So Ruth has got to be that reluctant leader. Agrees. And then we need Claire bargaining, right?
Hmm.
Which we need this like, fine, I'll go if I get to go back on the road later when this fails. And really, you should probably make it when Ruth fails.
Yeah.
Right? Something of that nature. So now we're traveling. Then when you have the wherever you put this politician,
Hmm.
that's a great transition point to anger and vengeance for, excuse me, I'm sorry, for anger and vengeance for Ruth. I'm sorry, for Claire. And
Hmm.
then when the killer beats them, that's a great point for depression, all is lost.
Yep.
And then finally, Claire decides, because remember, we're making choices, to trust the team and follow Ruth's leadership. Right. That's your last beat before they catch the killer and Claire is allowed to come to acceptance. So if we parallel Ruth's journey here, we've got reluctantly agrees, we've got Ruth struggles to lead, whatever you want that to look like. Ruth fails.
Yeah, she probably fails and tries to quit.
Yeah. And tries to quit. You had mentioned her daughter in here, right?
Yeah.
Like, so wanting to go home.
Yep.
And then this last beat needs to be Ruth takes the lead and helps Claire. Now, I don't know what those beats look like in your story, but this is kind of the journey that I can see your character on.
Okay.
Your character is on, right?
Yep.
So you've got this middle book where they're going to go on a journey together. All right, we've done an hour. But I'm going to keep going because we need to talk about book 3.
Are you okay?
Are you okay with that? Do you have time?
Yeah. No,
Okay.
Yeah.
So, like I said, book 3, we're picking up where we left off. Do you have any ideas for book 3?
A little bit. I have a theme.
What's your theme?
Betrayal.
Who betrays who?
And so that's Victor's wound. So he's gonna kind of step in and
Nice.
deal with his wound.
What is Victor's wound?
So he was betrayed by his family when he developed his powers. They kicked him out.
So, do we know what the inciting incident is? Do you have it in your head? Like, okay.
A little bit. This is where someone's gonna develop a cure for the powers, and it's gonna not be a cure. It's gonna be a terrible, terrible thing.
Okay.
And yeah, so that's kind of.
Okay.
And these guys are gonna, at the end, break the cure.
Okay. Describe Victor to me at the beginning of this book.
Okay. See, I just got that too perfect thing in my head. So he's
seems perfect.
Yeah, there you go. Seems perfect. But he also is very private, and the way that he kind of holds back his history always feels like there's something really dark there, but he won't talk about it.
And somehow what his darkness is going to be undercovered in this whole cure thing.
That's about all I have right now.
That's fine. That's a good place to go. So you've got a whole, like, you've got to finish book 1.
Yeah.
You've got to write book 2 before we get to book 3, right? So what we don't need to beat out book 3.
Okay.
Because the truth is, as you write book 2, these characters are going to change. What we do need to do is we need to get an idea of where Victor starting and where Victor's ending, because you got to write to this starting point.
Mm-hmm.
Right? When you're writing Victor in book 2 and book 1, if you're going to take Victor to this place where he has this darkness we're going to unveil,
mm-hmm.
It's helpful to have some ideas about what that is. You don't have to necessarily know beat for beat how you're going to unveil it, but you do need to know kind of where it's going. Does that make sense?
Yep.
We need to know Victor's like end game so that we can start kind of dropping hints toward that end game.
Okay.
Yeah. So he seems perfect, but there's something happens. We're going to have something in this book where his Victor's wound is revealed. When his darkness comes out, how do you think he responds?
I have to get there. Like my instinct is always to have people quiet, but I can't do that with everybody. So
think less about how his voice changes and think more about how he personally responds. Let me just throw some adjectives at you, and
Okay.
you can tell me which one sits first.
Sure.
He becomes an alcoholic. He goes into a violent rage. He quits and goes home, never to be a superhero again. He starts trying to fill the void in his heart by sleeping with tons of women. He any of these connecting? He starts to
Well,
do drugs. He rejects everyone around him and joins the bad guys. He becomes a champion for this evil cure. He
yeah. So yeah, we can go there. He sees the cure as a solution to his problem.
okay. So he denies is kind of like a denies himself and takes on and tries to erase his powers.
Yeah.
Okay. This is great. And I'll tell you why it's great in a minute. Where do you see him ending?
Um, that he. So yeah. So people I open up to. So being more open, being, you know, able to actually.
You can't start him at a denial of his own powers and then make him more open. And we've done the build a team book twice.
Yeah. So
So
can't
with
do that.
Victor, we got to go somewhere else,
Okay.
right? So he's perfect and but very private, and then we see everything fall apart, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
whole life falls apart. Real Victor, um, I'm going to throw some more adjectives at you, and you can
Okay.
tell me which one sticks. Uh, Mature Victor is the ultimate leader. Mature Victor is learns to follow. Mature Victor becomes vulnerable. Mature Victor um,
Let's say
uh,
learns to follow.
learns to follow.
Yep.
Okay. Now we said that you had mentioned in this book that there's some romance here between Victor and Ruth.
Yep.
Is that what you're picturing for this book?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to throw in there also this thing of this is going to be a transformation point with you.
Okay.
Victor allows himself to be vulnerable with Ruth.
Okay.
We're also going to have a Victor makes a connection. And then we're going to need a Victor rejects Ruth. Right? Like this is their story together. So, and these are just kind of beats of a romance, right? Like I know romance authors right now are like, you don't know anything. I know I don't. I'm just saying, like in a typical rom com, these are the beats.
Okay.
This isn't a rom com, but these are the beats of a relationship, right? Like Victor rejects Ruth. Victor comes to terms with himself, right? And then we're going to have this like Victor learns to follow is where his character transformation is going. And where his story transformation is going is Victor and Ruth together and Victor back on the team, or is Victor going to end with no powers?
Um, she's yeah. No, he'll. They have to break the cure together somehow. So I'm not sure how to get there yet.
Okay. And Victor's, so we're just going to leave it open. Victor and Ruth
Yeah.
together. Victor's powers?
Yep.
Question mark.
Okay.
Okay. We have another character hanging out there that we introduced and then we left out of book 2, and that's Abby.
Mm-hmm.
How does Abby play in this book, or does she? Or is she
So
gone after
yeah.
book 1?
So they're coming back to the home city because that's where the hospital is, where the cure is being
Okay.
developed. And I don't know yet whether Abby has powers, but if she does, they'll show up in this book.
Okay. Does Abby want powers?
She thinks her mom's pretty cool, but her father's terrified of it. So she's kind of
Okay, so she thinks her mom's cool and her mom,
Yeah. So
um,
it would
but
be
her dad's
cool.
terrified.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've got Abby floating in this book somewhere too.
Yeah.
So as you write book one, start thinking about where you want and where I would say the way I tend to think about characters when I add them is who does Abby become? And again, this isn't an answer you need now, but it is a question you need to be thinking about,
Okay.
right? So when I was writing the third book in my first series, I I recognized like, oh, I need a character to serve this purpose. I needed a guide, not a guide. I needed somebody who was going to transition the plot. He was going to like betray some people. He was going to get this magical item. He was going to, um, in the end, bring this magical item to the bad guys. I needed somebody to get the magical item and bring it to the bad guys, and none of my existing characters could do it. So I was like, I'm going to get a nerd from the monster world who's going to seem innocent and harmless, but then steal the magical item and bring it to the bad guys. Right. And so I started with the question of, well, I know where he starts. I know I need him to be kind of a librarian, is who
Mhm.
he is, a bookish librarian who is not one of the like fighter monsters. And so before I plotted the book, I just put in the back of my head, like, if that's where he starts, where does he end? And it was like,
Mhm.
oh, well, he's going to end, like in my head, I was like, he's going to end as a gangster. That's where he ends. I was like, that's the transformation. So once I have the start and the ending of a character's person, like a character's role in life, I can fill the beats in after that. I can be like, okay, so what line does he need to take to go from nerd to gangster? Kind of like we did here with Ruth. It was like, or with Claire, it was like, what line does
Mhm.
Claire need to take from like roving trainer who doesn't care about this town to accepting this local group as her own family? What's the road? Well, she's got to, and how does she come to a place of acceptance of the death of her lover? It's like, well, okay, we know she's got to have these movements, right? And then
Mhm.
we can kind of start to line those up and play with them with how they go. Right. And so
Yeah.
here it's like, then we can base where Ruth's struggle is. So here, you know where you want to take Victor, right?
Yep.
But you don't know what you want to do with Abby.
Mhm.
So the question is kind of like, how are playing off of what's going on with Victor and playing off of what's going on with Ruth in a minute, where does Abby end? And it's a question that you should be asking when you're writing book one, because Abby's
Okay.
in book one. But it's not something you got to decide tonight. It's just something that like this is something that needs to be floating in your mind, and it'll probably change as you go.
Okay.
So for Ruth, we know that Ruth is going to end in a relationship with Victor, right? We know that's
Mhm.
where she's going to end up. How else do you see this is your final book with Ruth, and you and your readers at a minimum are going to say goodbye to her as anything but a side character after this book. How do you want to say goodbye to Ruth? Where is she at the end of her journey?
She's probably going to move into a role of like one of the managers of the
Okay,
powered people.
so Ruth takes on a trainer. Where else is
Yep.
she?
She'd be like a mentor, kind of.
Okay,
And she'll be, I think she'll be pretty like she'll be able to have self confidence, at least at work.
yeah. And again, being self confident, her going from this journey of being, passive, introverted, she can go on a journey to being a self confident introvert. She doesn't
Mhm.
need to become like a people person at the end of the
Yeah.
book, right? Like she can still be her introverted self. She probably should be if that's part of her personality. So She's a mentor. She's self-confident at work. Where else do you see Ruth at the end of this book?
I don't know.
That's enough. If that's where we are right now, that's enough.
Okay.
Um, one thing that you're not wrapping at the end of the book is her relationship with Abby.
Yeah.
And it's probably because you don't know who Abby's going to become yet.
Yeah.
So you got to figure out what the mother-daughter relationship is there.
Yeah, I have to. Yeah, it's Abby in my mind is kind of like oh, the daughter Alexis in Castle.
I haven't seen it, but
Oh,
I'll jive with it.
okay. Yeah, she's just more like she's kind of a really mature child, so she almost has like a in the very first book she sometimes is like a little mothering.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I'll have to think
And
about that.
that answer, for me, that answer always comes if I know where the character ends.
Hmm.
Because it's like solving a puzzle. It's like,
Hmm.
okay, I've got the beginning, I've got the ending. What beats do I need? What
Yeah.
emotional moves do I need to develop this character to the end? And that's where these orange cards are going to come in, right?
Okay.
Like the beats of your story start to reveal themselves as you know how the character is going to transform,
Okay.
right? Like, so um, we've got how does Ruth feel about Victor at the beginning of the story?
At the beginning of this one,
Yep.
um, she trusts him, but she is uncertain about his relationship with Claire. So she's sort of
Okay. So Ruth has taken a back seat because with Victor, because Claire. Um, at the end of the story, we have Ruth and Victor together.
hmm
So we need beats to get us there,
hmm
right? Um, so something will have to be like Ruth discovers Claire and Victor aren't who they think she is. Claire and Victor aren't together. Or if they are, Claire and Victor need to break up. Ruth makes a move on Victor. Uh, we need the like Ruth questions Victor, and then the like Ruth falls in love with Victor. And usually in there somewhere is like a Ruth discovers the true Victor, right? This is the classic Pride and Prejudice move of, you know, I'm intrigued by Mr. Darcy, but I can't because of my station. Um, you know, then I discover that I might be okay. Then I start to make my move. Then I think Mr. Darcy's kind of a jerk. And then I discover the true Mr. Darcy. And then I fall in love with Mr. Darcy. And then Mr. Darcy and I are together. Um, and out of this shouldn't be fall in love, but Ruth professes love. Or you can have Victor profess love, but love is professed, right?
okay.
By someone um, in there. So we've got the start of a third story. I would honestly say the problem I have when like some authors do this really well. They plot out like 7 books. They know every single beat of 7 books and they're just going to write to those beats. I'm not that kind of author, right? Like, and I don't write that way. I need to have some flexibility. I like to have a plan that I can then change as I go. So this is the way that I would plot a series is I'm like, okay, I kind of know where I'm going. I know how I'm going to end. I kind of have an idea of how I get there. And then the rest of it is puzzle making and problem solving. Right. So you have to discover what kind of author you are, Faye. Are you a pantser, which means like this, what we just did stresses you out. You don't like it and you never want to look at it again.
No, this is this kind of thing actually makes me less stressed.
Okay, good. So we like plotting on some level.
Yeah.
Um, does the flexibility stress you out? Do you need more of a plot?
I think not, because when I have more, then I don't figure out all the things that could happen. I just, right, I followed the steps
Yeah.
too closely, and that's probably not productive.
I don't know that it's not productive. It's just a different type of writing. And
Yeah.
like we all need to find our patterns. We all need to find what works for
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. For me, I will follow the rules too much, and then I don't see things that I could see if I don't give myself as much structure. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yep. I do know what you mean. And I do. The problem I have when I write with too much structure is I tend to discover things I like as I'm writing.
Hmm.
So I'll be like, oh, like I'll be writing and I'll write a line that somebody says. I'm like, oh, I like that. Like I want to chase that. Like I want more of that. But then I look at my spreadsheet and I'm like, but I can't because there's no room. So I like to hold, especially future books like this one, I like to hold them loosely
Hmm.
because then I can be like, okay, I actually don't want, as I'm writing book two, I may be like, okay, I actually am liking Victor less in book two.
Hmm.
I know I said in my character chart that he was perfect, that he's the perfect man, but as I'm writing him, I'm actually discovering he's not perfect. He's awful, and I don't like him at all. It's all a mask, and I don't want Ruth with him at the end. So now I need to
Fair enough.
change book three, right? Like, so I
Yep.
haven't invested all that time in plotting book three yet. I just have an idea of it, and I can
Yep.
come to my whiteboard and I can be like, okay, I'm gonna move this stuff around
Yep.
and do
Let's
this
change this.
stuff. Yeah, because despite what Laura thinks, we've all realized that Victor is actually a jerk. So she doesn't listen to this. It's okay.
Okay.
She actually does listen. I'll hear it later. I'm not gonna post this for like 7 weeks though, so it doesn't matter. She'll forget. She won't forget. I'll forget, and then I'll be surprised about it when she yells at me. So anyway, sorry. This is me rambling. But yeah. So all that to say, like this is how I use it. You got to use these tools, whatever works best for you.
Okay.
The key is to keep yourself motivated and to keep the momentum going, right? As long as you keep the momentum going, there will be a book at the end of it. That's the great thing about writing. If you just keep going,
Just
at
don't quit.
some point, there will be a book,
Yeah.
right? Like you just got to keep going.
Okay.
Um, yeah,
I
you
trust you.
you may have to do a lot of editing, right? Like, you may have to like get to the end of it and be like, "What is this story I just wrote?" And then you have
Hmm.
to go back and rewrite it. But you will, if you keep going, you will get to the end, and that's the key. Um, okay, how do you feel?
Slightly overwhelmed, but positive.
Okay, awesome. Um, yeah, thanks for doing this with me. I'm
Oh,
going to turn
thank
off the.
you.
Any
Thanks very
questions
much.
you have before we?
No, because I think I've just got to keep going on book one until it's done, and then start doing more. Then start paying attention to book two, I think.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah, and I would recommend that. I would now that you have in the back of now that you have in the back of your mind where book two is going to go. You can't see my screen anymore because
Hmm.
I turned it off.
That's
Now
okay.
that you have in the back of your mind where book two is going to go, I would keep it in the back of your mind and finish book one. But then before you start book two, pull your plot back up
Hmm.
and make sure the beats work. Make sure, like, okay, these are the beats I want to hit. This
Hmm.
is what I want to happen. And then try to imagine some more detail. Like, what other
Hmm.
beats do I need to put in here? Where else does this need to go? Sometimes I'll even start breaking it down scene by scene. I'll be like, okay, now these are the scenes I'm going to write. Again,
Hmm.
holding it loosely because I might, as I'm writing, discover another scene. Or a lot of times as I'm writing, like the book I'm working on right now, I was sitting down last night to write a scene and I was like, you know what? I don't actually need this scene. So I just didn't write it. And I like went on to the next one. Right. Like so holding it loosely, not forcing yourself to actually like write everything you
Okay.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's stop the recording.